Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to KTC SoCal Weekly Sangha Gathering. My name is Jody, and I am the director of KTC SoCal. We're so happy to have all of you here from all different time zones. We welcome you to log on to our new website, ktcsocal.org, where you can find information on our center, upcoming events, as well as different levels of membership. If you should have any questions about becoming a member also, please feel free to reach out to us. And you can make a donation this evening to Lama Adam or to any of our teachers by following the link on the website or through the email newsletter announcement that we just sent out. This evening, we are so pleased to welcome Lama Adam, continuing his series on the wings of wisdom and compassion. And before I hand it over to you, Lama Adam, please mute your microphone so we don't hear any background noises, and I will give it over to you, Lama Adam. Actually, we will start with the refuge prayer, and if you'd like to lead us in the refuge prayer, Lama Adam, that would be great. Thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah, let me make sure I got the ability to share. I think, could I be a co-host?
Let me do that right now.
Oh, I think I can do it. I see it. I hadn't expanded my screen enough.
You're the co-host now, so you got it.
Okay. Everybody see the refuge prayer? All right. So we'll do once in English, once in Tibetan, and once more in English. And then I'll say a short prayer of my own. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of accomplishing generosity and the other perfections, may I attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. O Sangye Chidang Soki Chodnama Jangchu Padu Dakmi Kyapsuji Daki Jin Soki Pesunamki Rola Penchir Sangye Drupasho. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of accomplishing generosity and the other perfections, may I attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Oh, Pardon, Sawe Lama Rinpoche, Nagi Chiwa Pede Den Jula, Pardon Chambo Gone Jezunte. Usum Tugi Nudrup Sabdu So. Okay, thank you. I'd like to do one little interactive thing here at the beginning. This is a callback to a series I did last year. These years are running together. Some time ago, about just tuning into kind of like mindfulness. Part of this is like mindfulness of body, mindfulness of thoughts, but really like checking in with simple awareness of how we know. We could say like how we know when Shempa has kicked in, like how we know when we've gotten hooked with attachment or clinging or thirst. How we know that it not, and I'm not talking about like at the point where things have totally gone off the rails. I'm saying like for each of us individually, like, and I'm hoping people are, some at least are open to share, like, for instance, if you're in a conversation and you just start to feel like, I really kind of, I need to get out of this conversation, or this, not talking about wild, crazy, klesha upheavals. I'm just thinking like, how do we know when we're a little bit hooked, by attachment? What are our signs? Like what tells us that? And I'm curious if people want to share some examples of that. Yeah, Charles.
So, I think it's clear to me what was the term you used, Shempa?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's when is that when, define that again before I make some response. I had an example, but I want to make sure it's applicable.
Yeah, yeah. Peo Children talks about it as being like a hook, like when we've kind of been, in a way, it's sort of like when we may be in the flow of a situation, but all of a sudden we're kind of stuck on our preconceptions or our preferences, and we start to fixate a little bit on ourself or our, pleasure or our discomfort.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought it was. I'll tell you, and I still have a problem with this, and that's when I listen to political debate. When I'm watching TV and I see the political debates on, um, I can see myself just getting grabbed with feelings and thoughts and preconceived notions of the way things should be. And
Yeah.
and then I know, because the wrong is so clearly wrong, the wrong side. What we're given choice of right action or wrong action. And wrong action is so clear, and yet not everybody seems to see that. And so
But uh, before we even get to that part, though, what happens? Like
well,
what
that's
like
it.
what
That's what I'm
tells you?
talking about. I see that grab occur, and then I run with it, and then I see that this might not be the Buddhist solution, because I get tied into this is right action and this is wrong action,
Mm.
and these people fall in the category of wrong action. What's the matter with them? And then I see that dichotomy between good and bad and evil, and I start reacting to all that. And then I realized Dharma practice needs to show compassion, needs to show love, and but I'm trapped by that point, by those strong emotions and those feelings. And the only thing that can occasionally work, occasionally, and I got to be careful, because it takes extreme effort to sustain it, but it's to turn to tong-len, turn that whole negativity that's occurring, even also in myself, into that black cloud gunk, and bring it in and send it out, but in the form of love and white light. But that will work if I can keep my mind on that, but the negativity keeps drawing me back in. And then after a while, I just kind of give up and go with the way I've always reacted to it. And I'm not sure, and that's a samsaric response. So there's my example of Shempa grabbing me where I feel I've locked myself in and I can't get out of that. So then the solution, or one solution offered by some schools in Buddhism, is to just turn the TV off, disassociate from it, don't get engaged. And that works. But at the same time, there's part of me that says, I've got to remain engaged. I can't let negativity take over our country. And so, for the sake of right, I'm going to watch it again. And it all starts all over again.
Well, let me if I could, yeah, thanks for that. I want to narrow the question though, to just like even in like one sentence, like how do you know like physically that that's happening? But before, what I mean by before all of that is like before all the thinking and the solutions and all of that. Like I'll give you an example for me. Like I feel like the distance between my neck and my shoulder shrinks, and and my shoulders are coming up and my neck is coming down, and that kind of like before even really thinking about it. Like do you have like a physical cue for when that's happening?
Yeah, I when I'm tuned to feelings, I have experienced that. I'm not saying that I notice it every time, but that's one way I've caught myself when a sensation has hit me from somewhere in my body, my alertness is pulled to it.
Is there a specific one that you know of? Like,
No.
I'm really looking for like if there's a okay, yeah, that's something
somebody else has.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so this happens like when your throat tightens up, or you get you're fired up, like you're like hot, like you're fired up. You can feel the heat, like the internal, heat just rise, ready to go. It happened to me.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and you have to recognize it quickly. But yeah, somatically speaking, you're saying what's in your body. What do you?
Yes, that's a good word for it. Yeah, thanks. Any other ones?
Yeah, I'm like Charles too. Me and Charles know. Sometimes we text each other.
But yeah, is there a certain like cue, like physical cue before like pre-conceptuality, really, like something that just that's specific to you? Yeah.
Yeah, like just like kind of like yeah, there is a physical, like I don't know what's going on, but it's like in the heart region. It's just like kind of painful to think that like bad things could happen because of misinformation or something. I know that has nothing to do with it, but like the feeling, yeah, like I can't. It's hard to explain though, but like
that's good though. You said like in the heart, and that's
in the heart,
totally it. And you can probably kind of feel it right now because you know what it feels like and you're familiar. And these are good. This is exactly what I was looking for because first of all, there's been several examples and they're all different. And so this is why like I'm encouraging you to think about this, is because we are all our unique kind of manifestations, and like we have our own sort of languages of relating with things that come our way. And I think a really good just general practice of an applied practice of meditation is to really wake up to those initial signs that some sort of attachment is kicking in, and know our own language, like what our own body's language is there, and to be aware of it. And the follow-up question to that, before we dive into the material for today, the follow-up I want to get to is, and this is not a Dharma question, like what things do you know how to do to start to release that? And Dharma or meditation practice answers are not incorrect. But really, I'm just looking for just natural things you've learned through your life. Could be just taking a breath, could be going into nature, like I'm just kind of looking for the simplest strategy you have, to help to start to unravel that quickly. Like I said, Dharma answers are not incorrect, but I want to stay simple as possible. Yeah, Jody.
So, well, let's say if you're faced with a person you're starting to feel that hooked feeling and that person's in front of you, you can't just turn around and walk away and go into nature or whatever. I just have to go right to the breath, like the yogi breath, like just breathe it out, because otherwise my voice will sound weird and be crackly and like scared sounding. But if I breathe and then speak, it's like I'm better. Because I just had to experience something like that, and it's exactly what I did. Because I was
Mm-hmm.
faced with the person in front of me and I couldn't turn my back, which makes it even harder. Because if you have those,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to walk away and go in the woods or do whatever, it makes it easier. Almost. I mean, a little bit.
Yeah.
That's mine.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. One more, maybe?
I try to use comedy.
Ah, neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Gotta
think I have
laugh.
that strategy too.
Something.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So yeah, I wanted to start though. This is not unrelated to the ultimate bodhicitta topic that we're diving into today. Not unrelated at all. But to me, this is just such a really basic practice and a way of applying mindfulness and awareness in any situation. I mean, these signals are always coming to us, and a lot of cultivating mindfulness is just being aware of the information that's already there. It's already coming to us. And these are very simple things. Like what I'm referring back to is the resilience and resourcing on the Buddhist Path series. This was introduced in the context of, I think I introduced it by saying, how do you know when you're hungry? Like what are the signs that, you're hungry? Is it a physical sensation? Is it that you see pizza in your head? Like what are the things that are that precede us acting, whether that acting is with our bodies or our minds? You know what I mean? There's always like some blip, and like sometimes we're aware of those blips, but the more often we can be aware of those blips, the better, because then that gives us more information to make better choices moving forward. And frankly, a lot more of those little blips are very mundane, boring, seemingly unimportant things. And what rich opportunities we have to practice mindfulness there. Like I think so often it is in the heated moments and stuff, or the, particularly passion filled moments, that we feel like we ought to have our Dharma practice there to keep us centered and mindful. But those are the hardest times to do that. That's the most challenging scenario to actually apply these things. The real way to, the easiest way to apply it, and the most often opportunity for practices with these really simple things, like little moments of annoyance, or little moments of like, maybe another good one is like, I'm sure some people can relate. There's certain times where like somebody tells me about something, or I see an Instagram ad for something, and I just think like, well, I have to have that. Like I need that I need that in my life. Like, how could I live without that? Like, it's only $8, or whatever. But still, it's like in that moment, there's such a desire has kicked in, and logic is starting to be muted, but now I'm starting to become aware, like when I have that like sense. And for me, when that happens, I can feel it right now. It's like in my belly. There's like a feeling in my belly that starts to kick in. And now I can think, wait a minute, like I know the tables are tilted a little bit in this moment. So with awareness of that, I'll now make a decision. So yeah, I just want to offer that as a starting point. Daniel, did you have something?
Yeah, something I think Lama Kathy said recently about our desires. Our desires are limitless because our mind is limitless.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Well, I'm gonna do a quick overview of where we've been on this journey with Lojong. We've been relying a lot on Great Path, which is a quintessential book for this kind of stuff. But today we get to start to move where I actually wanted to go, which is Trungpa Rinpoche's presentation of these teachings, his commentary on Great Path of Awakening, which is called Training the Mind and Cultivating Loving Kindness. And we get to go there with a really heavy topic. And I think I mentioned this before, but this is, well, I shouldn't frame it that way, because it's kind of the opposite of where I'm trying to go. It's a big topic. It is a topic that can be fraught with confusion and pitfalls in practice. But what I hope comes across today, and what I think Trungpa really skillfully lays out, is that this kind of couldn't be more simple of a practice. And any sort of problems that we create all come from trying to make it much more complex than it needs to be. So what I really like about his approach, he takes a very different approach than you find in Great Path. It's his commentary on Great Path, and we're working with the same slogans as Great Path, but he takes a very different approach. And I'll kind of give you a little bit of both. But I hope that this will help, especially for people who have worked with this before, that this will help to maybe reframe things to make it a lot more accessible of a practice. So I want to share just a quick recap here of where we've been. And we spent a couple weeks on the first slogan, which is first train in the preliminaries. And those preliminaries we went through were the Guru Yoga, which was visualizing the Guru above your head. The Guru could be Vajradhara, Shakyamuni Buddha, whatever guru or teacher you relate with. If you don't feel like you have a specific guru, Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, is always a good choice. There's a short prayer that's offered in Great Path of supplication. So with the visualization of the guru above your head, you supplicate with intense respect and devotion. And the idea here is to supplicate enough times that you feel some kind of shift, some kind of real kind of click into intense devotion. And then at that point, the guru descends to sit in a pavilion of light in your heart. And that reflects the meaning of yoga in Guru Yoga, which here means union. So there is this sense of a separation between us and the guru, and then there is this sense of union with the guru resting in the heart. And that's the first step. And then we talked for a couple of weeks about the four thoughts that turn the mind towards Dharma: precious human birth, impermanence, karma, and the defects of samsara. And in particular, we talked about the method of contemplation, which is to review each of those topics. And I offered the contemplation companion, which is like a laundry list of all kinds of different, or a buffet of all kinds of different contemplations you can undertake. So we review a specific one, like we might review the idea that we actually have the faculties present to still hear Dharma and understand it, and how that is an incredibly precious opportunity. And we review that until we recognize, like, wow, that really is precious. I am so fortunate. And then at that point of recognition, we resolve to practice more, to do the Dharma for real. And to me, I think that really means a lot more in terms of applied practice than it does formal practice. Because as probably all of us know, like, you can devote a lot of time to formal practice, and you get off the cushion and into traffic or into politics, and things can go right out the window. So I think that for me, that resolution to practice, I really try to relate that with daily life, as much as formal practice. And so where we've landed in terms of an order for working with this, and this is not, something written in stone. And if you have other things that you're doing, or you've been told to do something first or second, or it's not a big deal, but a suggested order of practice here is Guru Yoga, contemplation of the four thoughts, short practice of shamatha, resting the attention on the breath, or any anchor that works well for you. And then an associated meditation on ultimate bodhicitta, and a principal meditation on relative bodhicitta. It's that associated meditation on ultimate bodhicitta that we're going to talk about today. The principal meditation on relative bodhicitta, many people are already familiar with. That's tong-len. So in a way, you kind of have a pretty complete practice of Lojong already if you've had some tong-len training. I think maybe the ultimate bodhicitta might be the only thing that's relatively new to folks. So the difference in these two presentations, I want to share. I know I've shared this quote several times, and I want to share it one more time. This is from the beginning of Great Path of Awakening, and I have really revisited this often with people, including myself. because ultimate bodhicitta can become quite a hang-up. And I think the reason it becomes a hang-up is because we really, really, really want to understand it. We really, really, really want to put it into, a category and a box that we know the shape of and the color of and the size of and the location of. And it can be very challenging for us, ironically, in the practice of understanding, ultimate truth, that we really want to understand it in relative terms. So this quote, I think, gets right at the heart of this. It says, "True ultimate bodhicitta will not arise in the course of experience of beginners, but relative bodhicitta will definitely arise if they train in it. With the development of relative bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta will be realized naturally." And I really look at that as permission in a lot of ways, to say, like, not to say that you shouldn't work with ultimate bodhicitta. That's not the point. It's just to say that true ultimate bodhicitta is not going to arise necessarily in the course of beginners, but it will arise if you train in relative bodhicitta, and with the practice of tong-len, without a lot of effort, the ultimate bodhicitta side will come into place. So all of this to say, like, ultimate bodhicitta is in a sense a whole other ball game. Like, we're not going to be able to conceptually get it, and that can be a very long process of coming to terms with, because we're just really not used to really just having experience that is beyond concepts and here or there and self and other and those kind of things. But that's what we're talking about here. So now, what I think's neat is we also have Trungpa's approach here, which is very different. And he says that this is like preparation for relative bodhicitta practice. And he really talks about this as something very simple that we all can have and do. And I love these kinds of things that seem like they're contrary, right? Because there's a little truth in both of them, for sure. And you kind of, I think, have to have both views to really find the middle way of the situation. And so he talks about the first thing that struck me is he says that ultimate bodhicitta is related with the paramita of generosity. And this is just a really different presentation than I had seen of this material before. And that's why I wanted to work with this, because his approach is just so fresh and different. But he says that he talks about the three types of generosity that many of you will be familiar with. Material generosity, which is like giving food or clothes or some kind of help to people with material goods. He talks about the generosity of fearlessness. Sometimes people talk about that as like protection. So helping people to feel safe. And then there's the generosity of dharma. And that's introducing people to a path that helps them to work with suffering in their lives, helps them to comprehend suffering and give up attachment and witness the ceasing of attachment and follow a path that leads to that. So those are the three main kinds of generosity. And he makes the point that generosity helps us and others to open up. It helps people to think bigger, to think greater. It helps us, it helps others. It is this, he says, it's a basic principle of ultimate bodhicitta to rest in the eighth consciousness, or alaya, and not to follow discursive thoughts. And so this is something that weaves through this whole section on ultimate bodhicitta, is this idea of these eight consciousnesses. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on them, but some of them are pretty simple. You've got your five sense consciousnesses that we're all aware of: taste, touch, hearing, smell, taste, touch, hearing, smell. What am I missing? Yes, sight. That's ironic. That's kind of the most intense one sometimes. So those are the first five. Well, not necessarily the first, but those are usually what are listed as 1 through 5. Sixth consciousness is a mental consciousness. So that's what processes the information from the senses. Then there's a seventh consciousness that goes by, there's a lot of different names for it. The one he uses here is, let me find it. I know I've heard it as the instantaneous consciousness, the klesha consciousness. I'll find it when we get there. But the point is that seventh consciousness is, if you think of it as the instantaneous consciousness, it's the ones that strings together each of these experiences as a seeming timeline. We can also think of it as where like the energy of emotions are kind of inserted into our experience. That's one of the ways he describes it. The eighth consciousness, though, where we want to rest, is sometimes known as the basis consciousness, and that is before that base well, it's not the all base consciousness. I'm trying not to get too deep into this because we only have so much time, but this alaya is really kind of just the way things are, and we'll get more into what that is. But the rest of those consciousnesses arise from that alaya, from that alaya that he mentions that we're going to talk about as resting in the alaya. So we're talking with this ultimate bodhicitta quote. He says, basic principle of ultimate bodhicitta slogans is to rest in the eighth consciousness or alaya and not to follow discursive thoughts. So discursive thoughts begin with that seventh consciousness, and then we also have all the senses and all that kind of stuff. So we'll get into more of that, but and have some time to discuss as well. I want to read a quick quote of his about this. He says, a problem is that we usually like to hold on to our territory and fixate on a particular ground. Once we begin to fixate on ground, we have no way to give. Understanding shunyata, or emptiness, means that we begin to realize that there is no ground to get, that we are ultimately free, non-aggressive, and open. We realize that we are actually non-existent ourselves. We have lots to gain and nothing to lose at that point. It's very basic. So we can think about this idea of like fixating on some kind of solidity or ground, or recognizing that there really isn't any ground to fixate on, which is actually quite open and can be comforting and unifying in a lot of ways, and can be really a mechanism to support generosity and kindness and caring. And we think of tong-len a lot when we think of Lojong, and compassion comes up a lot. And he also mentions in the book a common analogy of compassion being like a sore spot or an open wound. It's a kind of like a something we all have, all beings have it. And he even points out that, like, he uses the term cosmic monsters like Hitler or Mao Zedong. I'm sure we can think of some people we think of as cosmic monsters. Like, he says all of them each have some soft spot. There's something that they love. There's something that helps, that kind of just gets to them. Like, no matter what, it's going to kind of open them up and soften them up. And it's where the world can kind of get in touch with us. And so compassion is like this wound, in the sense that it can feel like it needs to be protected. Or like, if you think of an open wound in a crowded room, you're probably going to be very conscious of it, and maybe covering it, trying to take it, hide it from people. But we know, like, at some point you have to take the bandage off. You have to let it breathe. That's how it's going to heal. And compassion is kind of like that. It can feel like a sore spot. you know, but at the same time, it's something that when we let it breathe, it's going to do a lot better. And so to put a counterpoint to the quote I read earlier about true ultimate bodhicitta not arising in the course of beginners, Trungpa says, ultimate bodhicitta is preparation for relative bodhicitta. Before we cultivate compassion, we first need to understand how to be properly. How to love your grandma, how to love your flea or your mosquito, that comes later. The relative aspect of compassion comes much later. If we do not have an understanding of ultimate bodhicitta, then we do not have any understanding of the actual working basis for being compassionate and kind to somebody. We might just join the Red Cross and make a nuisance of ourselves and create further garbage. Classic Trungpa. So there is this view here now that like, well, we do need to have some engagement with ultimate bodhicitta here. And he also says we need to develop a sense of friendliness to everything. The early level of irritation and aggression has been processed through, so to speak, by mindfulness and awareness. There is instead a notion of basic goodness, which is described in the Kadam text as the natural virtue of alaya. This is important for us to understand. Alaya is the fundamental state of existence or consciousness before it is divided into I and other, or into the various emotions. It is the basic ground where things are processed, where things exist. In its basic state or natural style is goodness. It is very benevolent. There's a basic state of existence that is fundamentally good that we can rely on. There is room to relax, a room to open ourselves up. We can make friends with ourselves and with others. That is fundamental virtue of basic goodness, and it is the basis of the possibility of absolute bodhicitta. Once we have been inspired by the precision of shamatha and the wakefulness of vipassana, we find that there is room, which gives us the possibility of total naivete in the positive sense. The Tibetan for naivete is pakyang, which means carefree or let loose. We can be carefree with our basic goodness. We do not have to scrutinize or investigate wholeheartedly to make sure that there are no mosquitoes or eggs inside of our alaya. The basic goodness of alaya can be cultivated and connected with quite naturally and freely in a pakyang way. We can develop a sense of relaxation and release from torment from this and that all together. So I know that is way different from how I came at ultimate bodhicitta for a long time. I mean, I think because it seems so profound, something kicks in that like, oh, I need to use all of my brain power to really figure this out or get it, you know? And this is a whole different way of looking at it, you know? And I think we have to give ourselves that kind of permission and have that sort of compassion towards ourselves to just relax, you know? And so I think that permission was one of the things that struck me the most about his presentation here. To move on to some things about relative bodhicitta, I'm amazed at how fast time is moving. He says, relative bodhicitta comes from the simple and basic experience of realizing that you could have a tender heart in any situation. Relative bodhicitta is related with how we start to learn to love each other and ourselves. That seems to be the basic point. It's very difficult for us to learn to love. It would be possible for us to love if an object of fascination were presented to us, or if there were some kind of dream or promise presented. Maybe then we could learn to love. But it's very hard for us to learn to love if it means purely giving love without expecting anything in return. Very difficult to do that. When we decide to love somebody, we usually expect that person to fulfill our desires and conform to our hero worship. If our expectations can be fulfilled, we can fall in love, ideally. So in most of our love affairs, what usually happens is that our love is absolutely conditional. It's more of a business deal than actual love. We have no idea how to communicate a sense of warmth. When we do begin to communicate a sense of warmth to somebody, it makes us very uptight. And when our object of love tries to cheer us up, it becomes an insult. There is a very aggression-oriented approach there. In the Mahayana, particularly in the contemplative tradition, love and affection are largely based on free love, open love, which does not ask anything in return. It is a mutual dance. Even if during the dance you step on each other's toes, it is not regarded as problematic or an insult. We do not have to get on our high horse or be touchy about that. To learn to love, to learn to be open is one of the hardest things for all of us, yet we are conditioned by passion all the time. Since we are in the human realm, our main focus or characteristic is passion and lust all the time. So what the Mahayana teachings are based on is the idea of communication, openness, and being without expectations. So I wanted to share that quote because that analogy about the dance, right? Like, I love that idea of like dancing with our world, but I never thought about like, yeah, you do kind of sometimes just step on each other's toes or twist somebody's finger the wrong way, and it's, you know, not a big deal when you're dancing, you know. So I somebody had asked me once in retreat, I think somebody said like, and this is a fun exercise, which Buddha do you want to be? Like, you know, we have all these names of Buddhas. If you recite the 35 Buddha prayer, you know, there's Buddha of stainless light and all these different, you know, names, colorful names of Buddhas. And, you know, so if you were a Buddha, like what would your Buddha name be, or what would be your, you know, your thing, you know, your bag. And so, something to think about. And I just bring this up because one of the things I admire about great teachers is their analogies, like really good analogies. And so when I was asked that question, I said, I want to be the Buddha of perfect analogies. So, but think about that. That's a fun practice sometimes to think about what kind of Buddha you might want to be. So that's just a little beginning. I know we're probably not going to get through this whole section today, but I do want to jump into the first couple slogans here. So let me share a screen here again. So slogans, just to recap, are really the core of the Lojong practices. There are 59 of them. I'd encourage people before, if you can, to make your own cards, flashcards. Front side slogan, back side any notes you have about that. So this is our second slogan. We've really just been working with the first one. These get faster and faster. So we'll hopefully get through a couple more today, and then eventually they start to come fast and furious. So this first slogan is regard all dharmas as dreams. And Trungpa says this slogan is an expression of compassion and openness. It means that whatever you experience in your life, pain, pleasure, happiness, sadness, grossness, refinedness, sophistication, crudeness, heat, cold, or whatever, is purely memory. The actual discipline or practice of the Bodhisattva tradition is to regard whatever occurs as a phantom. Nothing ever happens, which is reminiscent of some of you may know, said to be the last words of the 16th Karmapa. Nothing happens. But because nothing happens, everything happens, Trungpa says. When we want to be entertained, nothing seems to happen. But in this case, although everything is just a thought in your mind, a lot of underlying percolation takes place. That nothing happening is an experience of openness, and that percolation is the experience of compassion. That nothing happening is the experience of openness, and that percolation is the experience of compassion. So in terms of a practice for this, what was taught to me here is to, once we have done the preliminaries we described and done a little bit of shamatha after that, we take a moment and close our eyes and try to imagine the room we're in. So with our eyes closed, we generate an image of the room in which we're sitting. And then we notice that that is in fact a mental experience. And it is a mental experience not unlike when we're dreaming. And then the next step here is to just consider, maybe, just maybe, it's also a mental experience in waking life too. So closing the eyes, imagining the room, recognizing that that is a mental experience, noting that that is like a dream, that a mental experience is like a dream. And then just considering the fact that, maybe our waking life is also a mental experience like that. Daniel, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So regard all dharmas as dreams. Does that just mean regard all activities as dreams? Because the word dharmas is, to me, it's like a little bit confusing. Like dharmas, I mean, is it just
Yeah.
Is it regard all activities as dreams?
Yeah. And dharma is a very wide-ranging word. Can mean a whole lot of things. Just for context, an alternate translation is "look at all experience as a dream."
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So that's the one that's in Great Path, and this is regard all dharmas as dreams is the one in Trungpa's book. But dharma and dharmas in general, yeah, kind of does just kind of mean. I'm sure Charles can say a lot about that too, but it can mean truth. It can mean the way things are. It can mean experience. I think it's a very widely used Sanskrit term, but yeah, we're really just talking about just kind of think about all experiences. And this is I mean this practice. I'm really hoping that we can take this approach of naivete here, so we don't have to think too much about this. It's just kind of like hey, this is. When I close my eyes and picture the room, it's a lot like, a mental experience and a dream. And when I open my eyes, is that different? This is also a mental experience, and so is my dream. And so really, when we do this practice, this slogan is really kind of encouraging us to just for a moment engage with that recollection that our experiences are mental, so is a dream. Maybe our waking life is a little like that too, Then we go on to the next slogan, which is examine the nature of unborn awareness. And this is where there's a little bit of a practice. And this practice is listed in Great Path, each of the kind of sections of this. I'll give it to you kind of as simply as I can, which is we're really just kind of, here, let's see what Trungpa says. I'll let him explain it. Look at your basic mind, just simple awareness, which is not divided into sections. The thinking process that exists within you. Just look at that, see that. Examining does not mean analyzing. It is just viewing things as they are in the ordinary sense. The reason our mind is known as unborn awareness is we have no idea of its history. We have no idea where this mind, our crazy mind, began in the beginning. It has no shape, no color, no particular portrait or characteristics. It usually flickers on and off and on, all the time. Sometimes it's hibernating, sometimes it's all over the place. Look at your mind. That is a part of ultimate bodhicitta training or discipline. Our mind fluctuates constantly. Look at that. Just look at that. He puts that in italics. So the traditional practice here, which is not what Trungpa suggests. So I'm kind of giving you two options here. You can just look at that, like Trungpa says here. The traditional instruction I have heard is actually to look for the things he mentioned. So to look for the color of your mind. I would repeat though in Trungpa's instruction, this is not analyzing, this is really just kind of like, can you see it? It's really kind of that simple. When I do this practice, I really have to sort of bring myself back to that naivete, that I think the word was pakshang, that sense of just being naive about things, because I am so jaded. It's really easy to start a practice of like, what's the color of my mind, thinking like, I know I'm not going to find it. So I have to really kind of tell myself like, maybe there's a color, like, can I see it? So I would really encourage you, if you do this, to come at it with fresh eyes each time. But if you look for these kind of things, if you look for the color, if you look for the shape, if you look for the location, interesting thing about looking for the location of your mind. I remember like one of the first times I tried this, like I started to get hungry, and I was like, wait a minute, I thought my mind was here. Now it's in the kitchen, like, so it's pretty easy. You think about some place you traveled in the world, now your mind's there, so you're not really going to find a location either. So with any of these things, whether it's color, shape, location, origin, where it goes, where it ends, those kinds of things, the point here is not to find them. And that's really getting at this whole idea of how ultimate bodhicitta practice is so different from everything else. You may be looking, but you're not going to find, and that's the whole point. And that has to be okay. So there's really an element of kind of like, maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but maybe sort of like proto compassion in that too. The fact that like we have to like be okay with looking and not finding, and then just resting, so that's really like, so Trungpa really kind of says, just look at it. And he says to say a little bit more about what he says, when we look at, your mind is basically speaking somewhat blank. There's nothing to it. We're beginning to cultivate a kind of shunyata possibility. Although in this case, that possibility is quite primitive in the sense of simplicity and workability. When we look at the root, when we try to find out why we see things, why we hear sounds, why we feel, and why we smell, if we look beyond that and beyond that, we find a kind of blankness. That blankness is connected with mindfulness. To begin with, you are mindful of something. You are mindful of yourself. You are mindful of your atmosphere, and you are mindful of your breath. But if you look at why you are mindful, beyond what you are mindful of, you begin to find that there is no root. Everything begins to dissolve. That's the idea of examining the nature of unborn awareness. So time really flew by. So, but I want to give you just this last, there's a couple more we should go through, but I want to give you this next one, just because I think this is the best stopping point as I can come up with, which is self-liberate, even the antidote. And so this really, he again explains this in kind of a different way than I'm used to. The other translation of this from Great Path is, let even the remedy naturally release. So this is really kind of that resting part. So we may look for a while, and then we rest. We look, we don't find, we rest. But the way Trungpa approaches this that's a little different is he talks a lot about antidotes as being kind of anything that we're doing, some kind of activity we're doing to try to cure some kind of situation. And he says that the idea of antidote is that everything is empty. If you have nothing to care about, you have an occasional glimpse in your mind that nothing is existence. And because of the nature of that shunyata experience, whether anything great or small comes up, nothing really matters very much. It's like a backslapping joke in which everything is going to be hoo-ha, yuck, yuck, yuck. Nothing is going to matter very much, so let it go. All is shunyata, so who cares? You can murder, you can meditate, you can perform art, you can do all those things. Everything is meditation, whatever you do. That dwelling on emptiness is a misinterpretation called the poison of shunyata. Some people say, so basically he says that this process of looking is itself an antidote, you know, and antidotes are any notion that we can do what we want, and that as long as we are meditative, everything is going to be fine. So the text says to self-liberate even the antidote, the seeming antidote. And the whole point of this slogan, he says, is that antidotes of any kind, or for that matter, occupational therapies of any kind, are not regarded as appropriate things to do. We are not particularly seeking enlightenment or the simple experience of tranquility. We are trying to get over our deception. So all of that to say that Dharma is remedial. You know, Dharma is itself an antidote to our deception, our self-deception, our confusion, our obscurations. Our natural state is goodness, is Buddha nature. You know, so we can just let go of these antidotes and rest in that nature. And that's what this slogan is getting at, is that we can engage in practices, but at some point we need to let those practices go and just trust, you know, trust in that naivete and that basic goodness. And so that's where we leave those sort of moments of looking at mind. You know, we look, we don't find, we rest. And there is more here that we need to go through, but I think that's a good place, given our time, to rest, if we will. But I have time. I know I don't want to make anyone stay late, but I have time if we want to have discussion, if there are questions or thoughts. Sorry, I felt like I had to kind of rush through there. I apologize, but I wanted to at least get our toe in the water.
Thanks, Adam, so much.
Ah, you're welcome.
I do have a question because I only heard point 3. I didn't hear point 1 and 2 because I was late, which could be avoided.
Yeah, well, first off, I think there will be videos, so you will be able to go back on the YouTube channel. But point 1 is related to the preliminaries, which we spent the first couple weeks or the first couple sessions on, Guru Yoga, Four Thoughts, and a little shamatha. And the second point was to regard all experience as a dream, regarding all dramas or all dharmas as a dream.
Thank you. I do that.
You're welcome.
Ready.
Good. Yeah. Good.
I think you get to a certain age where you realize it's all been a dream.
Yeah, if we're lucky.
Thank you for taking my question.
Oh, you're welcome. Anyone else have questions? Do you feel like I'll ask a question to the group. I guess my to name my fear, did I leave you hanging? Do you feel like you have something useful to work with? Okay.
Me, yes, thank you.
Good.
I do. Absolutely.
Good.
Taking refuge for thoughts, Guru Yoga, and shamatha, and realizing every experience is a dream.
Yeah. So really kind of like we could say we've started the associated meditation of ultimate bodhicitta today with a short practice of just kind of looking at the mind, you know, looking and then resting. And like I said, I think the overarching message I get from Trungpa's presentation of this is you can absolutely do this, you know, and it is simple. It's incredibly simple, and this nature is present, you know. So it's not something we have to figure out or develop, you know. It's there. Like it's couldn't be more simple, you know.
It's just tapping into it and not letting that bodhicitta and compassion go.
Yeah, even just I would say as simple as just kind of being.
Resting, I said it.
Well, madam,
But before we do yes, Daniel.
one other thing. I don't know if it's in mind training, but I once heard some Lama say, what if everybody's a Buddha except for you? What would they be teaching you? Everywhere you go, everything you do, how badly people treat you. What if they're all Buddhas? What are you to learn from them?
Yeah.
That's the beauty, though.
I love that. Yeah. That's very much like the idea of like the threefold bearing of seeing all form as the teacher and all sound as mantra and the nature of all thought as enlightened mind. Yeah. Thank you for letting me share this. And all next week we'll complete, because there's what is in my mind one of the best analogies for this that's coming up, and I really I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to do this through Trungpa's lens, because I have seen a lot of people really get hung up, including myself, on this ultimate bodhicitta thing, and to have this permission to come at it as a beginner, and that we can do it, and we really do got it. It was just so refreshing for me. So I hope that has come across for everyone here today too.
Lama Adam,
Charles.
was there a point where when you first started talking about ultimate bodhicitta and how to get there, the first quote you put up was practice relative bodhicitta and it naturally unfolds. But then I thought you said a little bit later on that practicing ultimate bodhicitta opens the door for relative bodhicitta. And it was only one line. Did I hear correctly?
Yes, but two different presentations. So
yes,
great
I'm
path.
not arguing with it. It was very interesting because the rest of it was all how to open that door through the night, freshness and naivete and fresh approach.
Yes.
But it was stated briefly, open that and you can get to relative bodhicitta, whereas the opening statement was practice relative bodhicitta and you can find ultimate bodhicitta. So it's a wonderful, almost a dichotomy, but a beautiful symmetry or symbiosis, synergy.
I found it that way too.
Yeah. Okay,
and I think it's because there is such a focus on Great Path, which is a fantastic book, but I just hadn't read this other take. Well,
it's wonderful. I sent you a note just for you. It's in chat.
I see. Yeah, thank you so much.
Read it later.
Okay, and I'll just real briefly. I'll say that quote was actually, ultimate bodhicitta is preparation for relative bodhicitta. Before we cultivate compassion, we first need to understand how to be properly, how to love your grandma and how to love your flea and mosquito. That comes later. So he's kind of basically saying we have to learn to be, and then we can learn relative bodhicitta. And so, I think I think you've got it. There's absolute, I shouldn't use the same word I'm going to use in the quote, but there is truth in both of those. I was going to say there's absolute truth in both of those, but that would be confusing. But yeah, they're both true, Yes, and as we say in improv world. Well, let's dedicate the merit of our time here together. I will put the dedication prayer on the screen. We'll do 2 verses of this, once each. So before we begin, just take a moment to connect with your body, connect with how you're feeling right now, connect with how the room feels. And make the aspiration that our time here today will be of benefit to all sentient beings and that we can ultimately help them to achieve Buddhahood. And with that, we'll say this prayer together. By this merit, may all beings obtain the omniscience of Buddhahood and defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, may we free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and also all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Take a moment to just rest your mind. Okay. Thank you all so much. Thank you for your practice and all of your aspirations. And I will see you again next month.
You.